12 Dancing Princesses. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 12 beautiful daughters. They slept together in a large room where their beds stood close to one another. At night, when they had gone to bed, the king locked the door and bolted it. But when he unlocked it in the morning, he noticed that their shoes had been danced to pieces, and nobody could explain how it happened. So the king sent out a proclamation. Anyone who can discover where the princesses dance at night will choose one of them for his wife, and will also be king after his death. If he fails, however, after 3 tries, he will lose his life. Even so, many tried. Each was put into a room next to the princesses, with the door left open between them. But each time the eyes of the prince grew heavy, and he fell asleep. And each morning the shoes were danced through. Many lost their lives. Now it happened that a poor soldier returning from a war found himself on the road to the king's town. There he met an old woman. He helped her chop some wood. She asked him where he was going and what he would do there. I really don't know, he said. Of course, I wouldn't mind discovering where the king's daughters dance and someday becoming king. That's not so difficult, said the old woman. Listen now. 2 things, I tell you. First, do not drink the wine they bring you in the evening. And second, you must pretend to be fast asleep. And then she gave him a magic cloak. And when you wear this, you will be invisible. No one will see you. You will be able to follow them. He thanked her. He plucked up his courage and appeared before the king. He was as well received as the others, and they dressed him in princely garments. In the evening, he was led to the bedroom next to the princesses. And just before bedtime, the eldest princess appeared, bringing him a cup of wine. But he poured it out into a sponge he had hidden. Then he lay down and closed his eyes, and after a little while began to snore, pretending to be asleep. The 12 princesses heard him and laughed. "Ha! He too will die," they said. And then they got up, opened closets and cupboards, and took out their beautiful dresses. They paraded in front of their mirrors, skipping around and talking about the dance. Only the youngest sister said, "I don't know what it is, but I feel so strange, as if something different might happen." "You're a silly little goose," answered the eldest, "always frightened. Have you forgotten how many princes have come here in vain? Listen to him snore. I needn't even have given him that sleeping medicine. That blockhead will never awaken." And when they were all dressed, they looked at the soldier, but his eyes were closed and he didn't stir. So they thought they'd be quite safe. The eldest went up to her bed and knocked on it, and it sank through the floor and into the earth, down, down, down. And one by one, the princesses followed the eldest into a dim and narrow place. The soldier, who had seen all of this, threw on his magic cloak and went down behind the youngest. Halfway down, he trod on her dress. "What was that? Who's holding on to my dress?" "Don't be so foolish. You must have caught it on a nail," said the eldest. They continued down, and when they had gotten underground, they stood on a marvelously beautiful avenue of trees. All the leaves were silver and glittered and shone. The soldier thought, "I'd better take some proof with me," and he broke off a twig. It made a sharp snap. The youngest cried, "Did you hear that sound?" "Oh, you silly girl, it's the steps creaking," said the eldest. Next they came to an avenue where all the leaves were gold, and he broke off a twig. And then a third where they were of shining diamonds, and he did it again. Each time there was a crack, which frightened the youngest princess, but the eldest chided her, and no one else cared. They went on faster, and they came to a great lake. Close to the bank were 12 little boats, and in each boat sat an enchanted prince. Each took a princess into his boat, and the soldier seated himself by the youngest. "I don't know why, but the boat feels much heavier today," said her prince. But he rowed across the lake, and there, stood a splendid castle from which came sounds of joyous music. They left the boats, and each prince danced with his princess, and the soldier danced too, unseen. If one of the princesses held up a cup of wine, he drank out of it, so that she lifted an empty cup to her lips. This frightened the youngest, but the eldest always silenced her. They danced and they danced until 3 in the morning, when their shoes were danced into holes, and they had to stop. The princes took them back across the lake, and this time the soldiers sat with the eldest. They waved goodbye to the princes and promised to come again the next night. When they got to the steps, the soldier ran on ahead, lay down in bed, and when the 12 came wearily in, he began to snore again, very loudly. So they said, "We're quite safe as far as he is concerned." Then they took off their beautiful dresses, put them away, and placed the worn-out shoes under their beds and lay down. The soldier didn't say anything the next morning. He wanted to see these remarkable things again. And he did. He followed them the second night, and the third. Everything went as the first. They danced their shoes into holes. The third time, the soldier took away a wine cup as proof. And when the time came to report to the king, he took the 3 twigs and the wine cup with him. The princesses stood behind the door and listened. And the king asked, "Now, where did my daughters dance their shoes to pieces in the night?" And the soldier answered, "With 12 enchanted princes in an underground castle, and here is the proof." And the king called for his daughters, and they were obliged to admit it all. And when the soldier was asked which princess he would choose for a wife, he chose the eldest. And so the wedding was held that very day, and the princesses were allowed to dance and dance and dance. And the soldier became king one day, and a good king he was, too.